You know, James, I'd like to turn the conversation to yourself, and I think one of the important elements that we need to discuss is exploration. You are very active in that space, and to point out that I'm sure as many of our audience do probably know, there's been very few, if actually none, you can correct me if I'm wrong, James, new kimberlite discoveries in the last 2 decades roughly. And in my mind, that would actually make natural diamonds more rare and yes, perhaps more expensive. But do you think this scenario is actually going to drive more people towards lab diamonds? And maybe, James, as an add-on to that, you can talk about technology, where it is in terms of kimberlite discoveries and how that could influence people's buying choice if new mines were found and built.
Thank you very much, Laura. You've asked me a multifaceted question.
I have.
But to answer your first point about the lack of diamond discoveries or commercial diamond discoveries over the past 2 decades, you're right to a very large degree, because Karowe, or AK6, as it was known in the days of discovery, was actually found in the 1960s and only rediscovered fairly recently, and it's now the fabulous mine that it was. The only significant diamond discovery in southern Africa over the last 2 decades is probably Petra's discovery of KX36 in the Central Kalahari, which runs at a grade of 35 carats per 100 tons and a diamond value of $100 per carat or thereabouts. And that is the only one that I know of which has the potential to be commercial. Now, why has there been a lack of diamond discoveries over the past couple of decades? Well, some may think it's a function of geology, or some may think it's a function of political risk. Yes, that might be the case, but I would also like to say it's probably more a function of the lack of investment going into diamond exploration, chiefly because of the general reduction in risk appetite flowing from the global financial crisis. Now, how can I say this? Well, before the global financial crisis, there were probably a dozen or more junior explorers in Southern Africa, many of them listed in London, particularly on the AIM market, others being listed in Australia and on the TSX and TSXV, and now there are only 2. My company, Botswana Diamonds, and then Canadian TSX listed Pangolin Diamonds. So that tells you, if you've only got 2 companies doing diamond exploration, where there is always a challenge in raising money, the likelihood of finding discoveries as a whole is generally lower as such. And then going on to the middle part of your question about natural diamonds and lab diamonds, is that picking up very much on what David mentioned in his interview and what Paul mentioned a moment ago, I think we can learn a lot from other luxury good markets. And this is something that I looked at when I was at De Beers probably more than 20 years ago, when they saw at this time where we are going to be now and where we actually could be in the future. And there's a lot to learn from, whether it be the sapphire market, the ruby market, or the pearl market. And if I just kind of briefly comment on the pearl market, you've got 3 different very niche products. You've got the natural, highly branded products such as the Mikimoto pearls. You've got the cultured or grown, which are still natural, and you've got the synthetic or lab grown. And each has its own price point, and each has its own market as such. And I feel that is the way you'll get differentiation in the diamond market between lab grown and natural. And then moving on to your question about exploration, Laura, I'm of the view that most of the easy and perhaps many of the not so easy diamond deposits have been found. And therefore, what are you going to do to actually find something new? If you keep on doing the same as what's been done in the past, you won't find anything. You'll carry on wasting shareholders' money and basically covering ground. So the 3 things I would like to leave your audience with on this area is that you've got to use new technology or mixes of new technology. For example, what we're doing in the Thorney River area in South Africa is a combination of detailed structural mapping along with detailed ground geophysics. And just to emphasize that point, an esteemed colleague of mine from De Beers, Bill McKechnie, had a saying that every time there was a paradigm shift in technology, the exploration clock started again in a particular area. And there's no better example of the rediscovery of AK6 in the Arapa cluster than that. The second thing is the level of precision has to be much higher. And why do I say that? Is that the KX36 discovery made by Petra, and it was a phenomenal job. That ground had been covered by many other previous operators before, and they made no discoveries. Petra had a very, very meticulous approach to their exploration, and it was this discovery came about literally from the discovery of 2 or 3 kimberlitic grains originally. And to find those kimberlitic grains in a whole swathe of Kalahari sand demands huge precision. And I think the third part from this, and this may not be surprising to many because my mother was a historian and she kept on telling me, James, you must always learn the lessons of history, is try and understand the historical and corporate context of why previous operators made decisions. For example, when you're going into an area and you look at the retention reports written by previous corporates, there would be possibly very good reasons why they abandoned areas at that moment in time because of the world at that particular point and because of their corporate context at that point. And it's very important to understand that because things change both from a corporate and a historical perspective. So how do you kind of mix all these together in terms of the work that we are doing? As far as it's possible, and the science is still developing, we try and target our exploration on those areas where there is a higher potential to find or discover a well above average dollar per carat. Because as we've heard before on this panel, there is obviously the threat of synthetics, but this is dominantly in the smaller stones and the poorer quality stones. So if you can find diamond deposits which are in excess of $150 per carat, for example, as an average rough price, you stand a much better chance of having a long-term sustainable business. I hope I've managed to cover your multifaceted question there, Laura.
James, indeed you have. Thank you very much.